Hello there, Garland Nixon here on a Saturday afternoon. We're going to talk about what I think will precede the negotiations next week and more. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we got plenty to talk about. Oh, look, we've got old Grizzly. Let's see what Grizzly has to say. Grizzly says, "Show me a leader that's not feeble and deranged." Oh, I think let's see, Vladimir Putin for one. I don't think Vladimir Putin's feeble and deranged by any stretch of the imagination. So yes, I think there are in fact leaders that are not feeble and deranged. At any rate, let's get talking. I think something right off the bat that sticks out to me, and I think this is something, oh, this is so highly predictable, right? Reuters, vessel attacked Russian unmanned vessel attacked Russian Shadow Fleet tanker in the Black Sea. Turkey said on Saturday that an unmanned vessel reportedly attacked a tanker in Russia's Shadow Fleet off Turkey's Black Sea coast after the ship was initially struck late on Friday. The Turkish Transport Ministry said in a statement that the Virat suffered minor damage after the attack, but is in stable condition and the crew is in good health. I don't know what happened with that, but here's what we know. That apparently there were, what we've been told, this is what has been reported. That is that there were two ships. They were oil tankers. They didn't have oil in them, and they were headed for apparently a Russian port, probably most likely, I guess, to fill themselves with oil. They were attacked with drones of some type. I've heard sea-based drones. I've heard possibly, drones in the air, whatever the case may be. And there were explosions and they were attacked. Now, it is my opinion that the UK is behind it. It is my opinion that the UK is behind everything. So don't blame me on this one in the UK. But here's what I think. There's panic. There's great panic, as you probably know. There's tremendous, there we go, it's a little better. There's a tremendous amount of panic going on amongst the deranged ruling elite. And if you think about it, they're not as deranged as it may seem. The ruling elite or political elite, I don't know about how much they're going to be ruling. The political elite in Europe are very, very upset. And here's an important part of it, of what's happening, and this is critical. Apparently, someone in Russia, it might have been Lavrov, Ushakov, one of them. Anyway, a very powerful person in Russia was asked, how come Europe is not involved in these conversations? How come Europe's not involved in the negotiations? And basically, whoever it was a powerful person, said, Europe doesn't matter here. The Trump administration clearly has come to that conclusion. They're addressing things as a practical reality. Okay. We can talk about a lot of things about why they're doing it, but here's the thing. They're facing reality here. This is what I'll say about the Trump administration. I am not aligned with them ideologically, sure, clearly. I have no shortage of criticism for the Trump administration. Sure, I have criticism for everybody, but I will say this: when it comes to the Ukraine conflict, it seems to me that they're addressing reality. Apparently, this guy named Driscoll, he's now taking Kellogg's place. And of course, if you've been following things, you probably know that he's very close with J.D. Vance. And that Vance is a major target for the neocons for a number of reasons, because he is a strong kind of anti-interventionalist voice in the Trump administration. It appears he was against any attacks on Iran. He seems to be opposed at this point, to these interventions. I don't know where that's going. But at any rate, Driscoll, this new guy, is a close confidant of his for many years. Apparently, Driscoll has said to the Europeans, look, guys, it is what it is. The Russians are winning on the battlefield. We got to face that. The U.S. just doesn't have the money or the war material to send there to get blown up anymore. I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Hey, look, you can live in a dream world all you want to, and the Biden administration was certainly willing to stay in that dream world with the Europeans. And you can criticize the Trump administration. Certainly, I could criticize them all day long, but here's a reality: no matter how we got here, their position seems to be it's lost. It's lost. We got to face it as lost. And it seems to be a realistic political position. How do we get out of this without taking all the heat for it? Yes, it's a loss. Yeah, we're kind of wearing it right now. How the hell do we get out of this thing without taking heat for it? I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible for them to do it, but I do know that it is rational for them to attempt to do it, right? They're up to all kinds of, miscreant activity all over the world. Look at the Paul Biya thing in Africa. That guy's like 912 years old, and the U.S. still has him in power, stealing elections. He's been in power since 82, just so they can keep drone bases there and steal the natural resources. Yes, the U.S. empire is what it is. It is malevolent, and it is a pirate empire doing things around the world. That being said, we must take every different circumstance for what it is. And of course, people like me, Scott Ritter, a lot of other people, Ray McGovern, a lot of us all take the position, look, we're talking about nuclear weapons here. All these discussions with other countries that are non-nuclear, we can work on that later. We can talk about that later. We can criticize with that later. But first, we got to get out from under a potential nuclear confrontation. That's my position. I don't even know if it's possible at this point. But one thing I know that is clear and that I think is groundbreaking, it is the earth changing beneath our feet. And that is when the U.S. goes back to what Russia said in the beginning, right? Which is European leaders don't matter. Now, I think there's two different ways to look at it. One way is this: they could matter if they were rational. Right? If the European leaders were to sit down with the United States and say, look, number one, firstly, we will acknowledge the power dynamic. We will acknowledge that China has a powerful military and a powerful economy, that Russia has a powerful military and a very strong and stable economy, right? That Russia's winning, that the United States has interests all over the place, and that Russia is not the United States' only interest. And the United States has made a decision to stop pouring money and weapons into Ukraine. The current administration has said, this wasn't the top of my list. It was dropped in my lap. I want the hell out. And they went out. If they weren't losing, they probably wouldn't. Let's be honest, but it doesn't matter what they would or wouldn't. Hypotheticals are not relevant here, okay? What do we have? A lot of people talk about hypothetical. Well, if they did this, they wouldn't, and if they were winning, they wouldn't, but they're not. Well, no, forget hypotheticals. Here's where we are. The Trump administration is looking, saying, all is lost. The game was played. Let's not be stupid. Let's not pretend like we're angels here. Let's not pretend. One of the things that Trump said a while back when they're like, Putin killed somebody, he's like, let's not pretend we're angels here, dude. Look, the United States is killing innocent people in boats right now in the Caribbean. Let's not talk about who else is killing anybody. The U.S. is doing all kinds of terrible things around the world. But in this instance, they've made a practical decision. We went out. We didn't know we can get out. I think one part of the decision that they've come to is that they can't get out working with the Europeans. What is the point of including the Europeans in a conversation, right? If you're going to sit down and the Russians are going to say, hey, look, we got the initiative, we're winning, your situation is going south. And America's like, yeah, that's it. You're negotiating with someone, you got to be rational, right? If I'm trying to sell you something and I say, look, I'm trying to sell it to you, and you say, look, my budget for this project is $50,000. And I say, but I want to sell you something that's 80. And you say, this is not my company. I work for I have a boss. You want to sell me whatever, this software. My budget for software for personnel is $50,000. If you want to sell me some software, it's got to be under 50. Otherwise, the most I can do is 50, including taxes, including installation, including training for my personnel. Everything involving the software has to be 50,000. If you can't sell it to me for 50,000, you got to get out of my office. And then the salesman says, all right, I'll do 60, right? No, No, you ain't getting a sale. That's where the Trump administration is. They may have screwed up, made mistakes, done things, imperial crap, you name it. But now where are they? They're at a real place where it's, look, Russians have won. And Trump is apparently has said to the, what's his name? Said to Zelensky, man, you're gonna have to take a deal or you're gonna lose the whole country. Right? Now, here's what has happened. The conversation has gone from you got to take a deal or you're going to lose the country, which is we're looking out for Ukraine. We're trying to do this for Ukraine. We're trying to save Ukraine, right? That was a fraud. That was not true. That wasn't true. But I think that's the game they tried to play at first. Oh, yeah, we're doing this for Ukraine. We're looking out for Ukraine. Okay. I think the conversation has changed with the Trump administration. Again, you know what? Could I call them mafioso guys? Yes, I'd call them mafioso guys. The U.S. government is a mafia government, but the mafia is honest. The mafia will come in and say, you give me 50% of your business. If you don't, I'll kill you. Right? If you give them 50% of business, they won't kill you. The mafia is straightforward. They want 50% of your business. If you say, you know what, I'd rather sell you the whole 100% and move on. The mafia might say, okay, we'll buy your business and we'll give you a reasonable price, whatever, right? But they're straightforward. When they say 50%, they don't mean 51. They don't mean 49. They say 50%. You know what they mean. And when they say we'll kill you if you don't take the deal, you know they'll kill you. They're being straightforward, right? It is what it is. And I think the Trump administration, a mafia administration like all of the U.S. administrations, went from Ukraine, we're doing this, we're going to help you, we're going to get out of that, you're going to lose your country, you're going to be destroyed. And Ukraine's like, no. My masters over there in the city of London had said I have to say no, and the answer is no. And I think the Trump administration, the U.S., whatever, has said, okay, Ukraine, we tried to do this in a way that sounded good. We tried to do this in a way that would at least give the appearance that we were looking out for the Ukrainians. You know, that we're trying to help a plucky little democracy to overcome. They've been invaded, blah, blah, blah. We've tried to do this in a nice way. We've tried to have the right rhetoric. We ain't doing that no more. And now I think it's become, because what does the mafia do? They start off with nice, well, Mr. Nixon, doing a business deal with you. This guy's busting my chops here. Zelensky, he's busting my chops here. That's the way it starts, right? And then before you know it, it's, would like to make you an offer. Plato or plomo, right? The silver or the lead. That's the direction that we're moving with the U.S. They went from, we'd like to include the Europeans. Maybe they can talk. We'll sit down and chat with the Europeans. They're our dear friends. Next, oh, Ukrainians, come over here and sit down. We're going to work together. We're going to hug. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. That's the way they started off. That's the way the mafia always starts off, right? It's going to be nice. We're all going to work together. Oh, isn't this warm and fuzzy? Don't forget, the United States is a mafia state. They will kill you. They will kill you. They will blow you up. You will disappear. They'll kill everybody near you. Let's not forget that. People have forgotten the history of the U.S. Look around. If you push back against the U.S. mafia state, sooner or later, the fangs come out. Right or wrong. They start off smiling, but the fangs come out, right? And the fangs are coming out a little bit more. And now they've talked, the Europeans are our allies. They're our friends. We always work together. We have years with the Europeans. And the Europeans are like, we're not working with you. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. Now the U.S. is like, what Europeans? The Europeans? Never heard of it. We're going to talk with the Russians. And the Europeans were like, Kaja Kallas, we must talk with this United. We must be included. We will not allow things, blah, blah, blah. Ain't fried rice. You know, this is Kaja Kallas, right? She's goose stepping all over creation, doing her Field Marshal Kallas imitation, right? And so now they're like, and the Europeans, they must do this. We must do this. And the U.S. has gotten to this point. We can't hear you. Huh? Who? What? Did somebody hear a mosquito? Did somebody hear a chihuahua yapping? I didn't. Got to get back over here and talk to the Russians. Europe, you are irrelevant, and you've been put in your place. The Americans are saying, we're going to get a deal with the Russians. And the Europeans are like, well, we won't go along with it. And the Americans are like, yeah, you think you won't? You think you won't? We're going to go get this deal because we don't give a crap about you. And then once we get that deal, we're going to make a phone call. We're not even going to come visit you. We're not even going to come knock on your door. We're not going to burn the jet fuel in Air Force One to fly to Brussels. We're going to call you and we're going to say, here's what you're going to do. You will enthusiastically support this deal. If the deal comes up, the odds aren't good that we'll get a deal, but let's just play with this thing for a reality. Let's get the reality here. Let's get the reality that the U.S. is going to say to all of them, here's what you're going to do. You know who you're talking to? Hey, this guy here, Gwendolyn, yeah, she's busting my chops, yeah. If you don't think for 1 second that the United States will drive these people out of power or worse, you are, as George W. Bush would say, misunderestimating the treachery and the violence of the United States. They are violent, treacherous people running this country and always has been. And if you cross them, they'll hurt you. In one way or the other, they'll hurt you. That's a fact. So what's going on now is the U.S. is down to reality. See, what happened is this. They got pushed into a corner. The U.S. was playing with the Europeans and saying to the Russians, apparently, see, what we got is the Europeans have been, the Americans have been all along, the whole time, they've been working with the Russians. That never stopped. It's obvious now. Their team's been working with the Russians. The Russians team, what can you do? Blah, 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 this and that. Okay. And of course, this 28-point plan that came out, what was it? I think that they might have been getting close to something. They were getting ready. They were like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And there was panic. And there was, okay, we got to stop it. And so they specifically released, these were notes. These were cliff notes. Right? This was not a deal. This was not anything final. They were writing off things. And I think they were like, we got to do something to stop this. Obviously, we're getting close, too close for comfort for somebody. And they leaked it to throw a monkey wrench in it. That's all that was. And I think the United States saw two things. Number one, they knew the Europeans were behind it. They knew the Europeans were behind the Kellogg leak, number one. Number two, they knew the Europeans were behind the Witkoff hack and leak, as they call it, where they recorded Witkoff's conversation and leaked that out. So now the Americans are like, look, we're not playing with them anymore. And the big boys table, that's the children's table. Because what's happening? Monday, have you saw that? Wang Yi, the foreign minister for China, he's going to be in Russia on Monday, along with an American delegation. They're all going to be in Moscow. Let me see this. People aren't Wang Yi. God, right here. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will travel to Russia for bilateral conversations on strategic security on December 1st and 2nd, right? So that's Monday and Tuesday. Let me find this. A United States delegation is due in Russia next week for talks on the war in Ukraine, according to Vladimir Putin, right? U.S. Special Envoy Witkoff is expected to use the delegation in Moscow. So here's the deal. Here's where we are. Monday, Wang Yi's going to be there. Very powerful man from China. Witkoff's going to be there. Putin's going to be there, or his people that work for him, right? Here's what I'm saying. The big boys are coming to town. The children are not allowed at the table where grown people are. I think that the Americans are serious. I'm not saying they're going to get a deal. I'd say the odds are they can't. But one thing's clear. They are serious about getting a deal. And they know they got to deal with Russia. And they probably figure they got to deal with China. We got to talk with these people. And the Americans have looked at it and said, we can, and I think the Trump administration, to be frank, wisely, had said, man, we are not willing to see these planes taken off like they were in Kabul with a bunch of people dangling off the side of the fuselage. Man, that's a humiliation. The Trump administration said, we can't do this, man. And we see it coming. Remember Garland Nixon calling it the Samsonite option 2 years ago? That's what they're doing. They're trying to exercise the Samsonite option. They want out. They want out. And everybody, and they've talked to the Chinese, and I'm sure they talked to the Chinese, the Russians, the Chinese, the Americans, all coming to town on the same day. And now Orban comes in first. Why has Orban been there the last few days? Because he's representing the sane people he's representing the guy, Slovakia. I mean, think about it. This guy in Slovakia is an old school leftist, socialist, communist guy. Lukashenko is an old school Soviet Union communist kind of guy. Bet you he's going to be in town. Bet you Lukashenko is going to be in the middle of this, right? So you got guys like Lukashenko and Fico, right? Who are old lefty communist kind of guys. You got Viktor Orban, who's a modern day right kind of conservative. You got people who may have ideological differences, but they're reasonable, logical people who are looking out for their own nations, right? You got the new guy in Czechoslovakia. You got people around who are like, yeah, we don't want any trouble. We don't want a war. We don't want nuclear war. We don't want World War III. And I believe Orban was there to talk. That wasn't just about oil, to discuss it. He was given things to take back. And here's the thing. He's in the meetings. He was there so he could say, let me tell you, I'm at these inside meetings at the EU or wherever with these maggots. And let me tell you what they're saying. Right? He's a very valuable resource. It's not an accident. Put it together. Orban's in town for several days. He's meeting with Putin. What does Putin need to meet with Orban about? Where the gas pipeline goes? That makes no sense. He can send his lowest of the lower guy to there to meet with that, right? No, I'm not 100% sure why Orban was there, but I will bet you $1 against the donut that Orban was there. Orban's visit had something to do with what's going on and what they're trying to make happen this week. Okay. And also remember this, just before this release of document of this, leak of this 28-point plan, Trump had just said, I think we're a week away. Remember that? Trump says, I think we're a week away. I think we're close. I think we're going to have something. Boom, the document leaks. Well, he wasn't the only one that might have thought they were closer. So they're like, hey, I think we're getting somewhere. Things are looking good. Oh, yeah, we got to put a stop to that. They leaked the document and try to stop it. Didn't work. So now, knowing that what was happening, obviously the Trump team has completely sidelined the Europeans. Marco Rubio, Joe Neocon won't even talk. They won't even talk to Kaja Kallas. Why would you talk to Kaja Kallas? If you want to be credible on the world stage, you can't talk to Kaja Kallas. You cannot talk to her if you want to be credible. She's a ditzy fascist. That's the worst kind of fascist, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to be a fascist, at least be a competent fascist. You can goose step around. You can have a square jaw and look tough all the time. You can say you're going to kill, I don't know, the minorities or something. You can threaten the Jews and the, whoever's, threaten the minority groups, threaten the Romas and the Gypsies, do the things that fascists do. Fine. But don't be a ditzy idiot. And this woman is ditzy at the highest level, right? So nobody's talking to her. Nobody's talking to her. And she's out. So the United States, the Trump team has made a decision. We're done. They're out. We're going to meet with the Russians and obviously the Chinese. The Chinese are bringing something to the it's a very powerful country, right? And they are a very close ally with the Russians. So they got to be, I think they have to be in the conversation. If you expect something that's going to last, if you expect, some people are going to have to give guarantees. The Russians don't trust the Americans as far as I can throw, I don't know, or Chris Christie, for God's sake, which ain't far, right? So the Russians have no trust. So there's going to have to be some guarantors in there, right? And I think the Chinese come in there where they could maybe be some guarantors. People talked about the maybe some African troops, but they don't have the kind of horsepower that the Chinese got. Chinese got real horsepower. The Chinese can say, we got a deal. Here's the thing. If the U.S. says we have a deal with the Russians know they can't trust that as far as they can throw it. So think about this. If I'm the Russians, I say, Americans, here's the issue. This is why the Chinese is there. Americans, here's the issue. We had Minsk 1, Minsk 2, Minsk 3, 4, 5. We've had deals. You don't keep your deals. You got to deal with the Chinese right now. You damn sure got to keep that, don't you? You got a 1-year deal with the Chinese, an economic deal, but you got to keep that one, because if you don't get any rare earths, right? So the only people that can force you to keep a deal is the Chinese. So when you talk to me, and guess what? These Chinese people are my buddies. That's tight. Those are my aces. We're close. They need my oil. I need their money. It's a match made in heaven, right? Like the song, I got the brawn, you got the brains, let's make some money. Well, both sides got brawn and both sides got brains, right? Chinese and the Russians. So they then bring the Americans in. If they get a deal, again, we're betting they probably won't, but let's just say theoretically they get a deal. The Russians then say the deal is a 3-way deal. We don't trust a deal with us because we know you'll violate it before your plane leaves the tarmac, in Moscow. You're going to violate that deal. That's done. We know that. We don't trust you. Trust but verify, right? But we know that you need those rare earths. So you're going to sign a deal with us and the Chinese. You're going to guarantee us and the Chinese that you'll do this, this, and this, right? So I think that, to sum it up, the Americans have come to the conclusion that they're facing a humiliating defeat, and they're trying to, that's all it is. It's a serving thing. It's not for the good of the order. It's not because they want peace. It's not because they love Russia or anything else. It is simply self-serving. The empire knows that there is humiliation coming. How do they mitigate it? How do they affect the level of humiliation? A catastrophic, humiliating defeat in front of everybody against the Russians is a 10. Let's say that's a 10. You go to the doctor, where's your pain? Circle on a scale, where it is. And on a scale from 1 to 10, whatever, where's your pain today? Okay. A catastrophic, humiliating defeat for NATO, let's call that a 10. How can I get it lower? I don't know if I can make it a 9, a 7, or 1. I want it to be a 0. How can I make this thing lower? I'm facing it now. I think that's simply what the U.S. is doing, and it's rational for a superpower to do. So, and they say to Russia, and I know I'm facing a humiliating defeat, and that's going to be dangerous for all of us. I don't want to happen. And Russia, wisely, because the leaders of Russia are pretty smart, are like, yeah. Now, you step to us. So it's our job to issue you the humiliating defeat that you ordered. You came up and we said, what would you like, sir? Would you like water? Would you like an appetizer? And you said no. Oh, let's see. Let's go under the war seafood. No, surf and turf. Let's go with humiliating defeat. You ordered a humiliating defeat. We got to serve it up to you. However, like a good restaurant, the humiliating defeat has come. You've looked at it. You've said, I don't like the smell of that. Can I get something else? And they're like, you know what? No problem. We'll bring you out something less than the humiliating defeat. Perhaps that's a bit too much to swallow. Perhaps something less. Wisely, the Russians, why wouldn't they want to bail the U.S. out? Number one, they can start, a lot of banking stuff that's a pain in the ass they won't have to deal with, right? It'll make life easier for them. Not that they need the sanctions lifted, but there are some that would allow them to do some things they don't do. They don't want a nuclear confrontation with those idiots in Europe. So maybe, the U.S. could lean on them. Of course, China's there. Everybody's there. Perhaps we could get something. So as far as the Russians, they would be happy to let the U.S. off the hook. And of course, nobody wants to see the U.S. economy crash because it could drag everybody else's economy down with it. They don't want this. If the U.S. economy crashes, if other economies crash, then the demand for oil and gas and things they sell will go down. That will hurt them. No, you're the Russians. You want out of this in a nice, clean, easy way. So now China, it appears to me, nobody's talking about China. People are not mentioning this critical thing, and that is that Wang Yi's showing up Monday at a time when the deals are about to be done, if they can be done, at least talked about, that Wang Yi, that the Chinese are going to show up. That is not incidental. That is a very important factor here. So Chinese are here, the Russians are here, the Americans are here, Europeans ain't. That tells you the Europeans are out of the picture and they're done for now. And the reason they're done for now is because of their leaders, because their leadership is going to have to be changed, and their leadership will surely be changed. They will be changed. If you remember, at the beginning of the conflict, at the beginning of the special military operation, one of the things that President Putin said was, I suspect that at the end of this conflict, there'll be a different set of elites in Europe. Yes, that's coming. And the United States, if they got anything to do with it, will help to facilitate that. So what's coming now? First of all, and this is critical, this is one of the things points I was making, I guess, and this is something to understand. Every single time that the U.S. is getting ready to meet with the Russians, that there's going to be a peace meeting, we know that the Ukrainians and the UK try to disrupt it. And I mean, this is getting so old, it's ridiculous, but it is what it is. They try to disrupt it by throwing a bunch of drones at Russia, right? It's like, we're going to hit Moscow. We're going to do something. We're going to disrupt it. I mean, it's so old now, some false flag. I don't know, Bucha, Hoocha, Smoocha, whatever the hell. There will be a false flag. You guaranteed the UK within the next 2 days. I guess it'll be Sunday. Because we've got a pattern here. The Russians, the Americans, and all are going to start meeting Monday. So I imagine come Sunday night, it'll have to be some drones will come towards Moscow, whatever the hell, hit some civilian places in Donetsk, blow up a bazaar or something like that, or, a school for blind people or something in Lugansk. You know what they're going to do? Number one, they're going to maybe blow up something in Ukraine and say the Russians attacked a building that houses orphaned kittens and puppies. Right. And of course, to try to bait the Russians into an overreaction, you start attacking commercial ships. That's what's happened in the Black Sea. The UK and through their puppets in the Kiev regime, the UK has obviously decided we're going to start attacking Russian ships. That's what they're doing. They're attacking Russian commercial ships. And that's a hope for them to try to disrupt this thing. Number one, it isn't going to work. Number two, in a way, all you do is you remind the Russians and the Chinese and the Americans even more why you have no business being a part of this conversation. That's the other part of it. They're like, because right now, if I know that tonight, tomorrow night, it's Saturday, Sunday, and maybe even during the negotiations next week, if I know there's going to be drone attacks on Russian infrastructure, there's going to be false flags all over the place, who knows, CIA agents possibly running around shooting at National Guardsmen, things of that nature, maybe some trans activist, trying to take somebody out and hiding a gun in their pants, the crap they do. I even think to myself, some guy shoots a couple National Guardsmen, and I look and he's got a history as a CIA operative, right? And I'm like, even that's the kind of thing you do to set people against each other. That's the kind of thing you do to take all the news and all of that away from what's happening in Ukraine. 1 minute they're like, hey, what's going on in Ukraine? It looks like maybe they're talking about oh wait, look, a CIA operative just shot 2 people, National Guardsmen. What a terrible tragedy. Which I may add, it is a terrible tragedy, but it's also kind of conspicuous that the guy's a CIA operative. What do you think? That's an interesting way to take the news cycle away from Ukraine. And no, look, you don't want to look at peace. They're talking about peace in Ukraine. We don't want to talk about that. Look, there's one of our CIA operatives. He's shooting people all over the street. I wonder how that happened. Coincidence. The problem they have too also with that is that everybody now is hip to him. As soon as as soon as it happened, I already knew. Boom! There was two National Guardsmen shot on the streets of DC by somebody, and I thought, is it going to be an illegal immigrant or a trans activist? Those are the only two subjects we're allowed to talk about. It wasn't illegal. It was an immigrant. That's the best they could do because of what the CIA probably doesn't have this. They don't want to expose their illegal immigrants. So they figured, well, we'll take one of our operatives here, maybe, do a little bit of MK Ultra, whatever we got to do. Boom, this guy shoots a couple people and nobody's talking about Ukraine. Everybody's talking about that. So call me a conspiracy theorist, if you will, but how the hell does a guy go wandering around on the street shooting a couple people, and we find out within minutes after it happens that he's a former CIA operative? And I don't look at that and bring those two things together. So perhaps this operation could be connected. That's all I'm throwing out there. Perhaps it could be connected. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a CIA puppet myself. Who knows? But I'm just saying, you better look over your shoulder and say to yourself, I think we're being had. And I think maybe over the weekend, another activist shooter shoots somebody, another former CIA immigrant from wherever the hell, Libya or somewhere, goes and shoots a couple innocent people. I'm just saying, look over your shoulders, keep your head low, because the false flags are incoming. Maybe a building 8 falls, right? Maybe like a Cessna flies by a building in New York, and 40 minutes later, it just drops. Boom! Right in its own, right in its own, pattern like that, straight down. And then we can say, what do you know? There's a plane flew past this building and it collapsed, just like Building 7. Must have been Al Qaeda, no doubt. Anyway, and then the Cessna pilot's passport mysteriously flies out the window and flutters to the ground, and it's like, hey, this guy's a trans activist, illegal immigrant. Who could have possibly saw that coming? That's all I'm saying. Don't trust this crap. But at any rate, back to the important stuff. So, as I'm saying this, I think that's where we are now. Where we are now is Europe's out of the picture. They're done. They're not part of it. This is a superpower talk. Andre Martianov always talks about that. There's 3 powers, man. There's Russia, there's the US, there's China. That's it. The rest of them, you will follow the leaders. That's the truth. Number one, I think that the plan at this point is, if they can get a deal, is that Trump, or not even Trump, he ain't going to even call him himself. He'll send somebody else over there to call him. Maybe J.D. Vance. It's funny. Nobody hates the Europeans more than J.D. Vance. He despises Trump, and they hate the Europeans, right? So I'm thinking that now the plan is make the deal as best they can. And look, if they get a deal, the Russians will give up a little bit. Yes. See, here's the thing about the Russians. If you think about them giving up anything, what the Russians have to have is some kind of security guarantees, right? What can they get out of it? If the Russians, just think about this. If the Russians say, we will sign a non-aggression pact with Europe, right? And the Americans say, and we'll put our signatures on it. And the Chinese say, we'll put our signatures on it, right? And it's NATO, which you can't trust them. And then they run it through the UNSC and all that kind of stuff, right? But the fact that the Chinese signatures are on it, the Chinese can cut people the hell off from the rare earths. And now it's not a matter of talk or trust. It's a matter of, do you have power over someone that you can force them? It's not just, can you trust the Americans? Is it, do you have something they have to have that you can hang over their head? You can't trust the Americans. But if you say to the Americans, I don't trust you, but if you screw up, you're not getting any rare earth. That's the only way that's the truth of the fact of the matter. That's like the mafia saying, we got a deal, and I'm going to keep my end of the deal. But if you don't, I'll kill you. That's how the mafia works, and that's how the U.S. mafia usually works. But the Chinese can play that same game without the violence, because what do they have? They have rare earths, and they can say, "We got a deal here," and if you violate the deal, you get no more rare earths. Well, that means for at least the next 10 or 15 years, the U.S. has to stick to that deal. And I think the Russians will take that, because they know over the course of 10 or 15 years, a lot of things are going to change. They're going to get much more powerful. The Chinese are going to get much more powerful. They'll be able to bring bricks and to grow bricks. And at that point, they'll be able to have their own economic infrastructure that will allow them to do some things that they can't do, and to make some assurances that they can't do. I think they understand right now you ain't going to get much more than 10 years of security. If you can get 10 years of security, you've gotten a lot. So at any rate, so I think that's where we are. I would love to see the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians come out of next week with something. I'm not even saying the end of the war. Hopefully that would be great. But I would love to see those three superpowers come out with something. Something. I don't know. But we'll see. I don't have any idea. And now I see, and I understand this. Let me show you an example. Zero, no remote possible, zero chance the U.S. will play this kind of ball. And I understand, right? I understand the level of cynicism, and I have that level of cynicism. So I'm not going to criticize people who have that level, because it's not cynicism. It's logical. You are what your record says you are, right? So based on all of that, I would say that person's probably likely, what is it? In law, what do they say? A preponderance of the evidence, right? 51% yes, as opposed to no. So I would have to say the people that are saying no, the U.S. will never get a deal, the preponderance of the evidence is on your side, 51%, right? But again, nothing ever happens until it happens. Nothing is ever possible until it happens. Nobody could possibly run a 4-minute mile until a guy ran a 4-minute mile. And once he ran a 4-minute mile, a whole bunch of people started running 4-minute miles. It ain't possible until it happens. So it's not possible for the U.S. to stick to a deal. But when was the last time, or make a deal? The United States was the second most powerful economic power in the room. That ain't happened, has it? So now, when they're in a room with Wang Yi's going to be sitting there. You really, really want to keep this flow of rare earths meeting coming, don't you? Yeah, we'd like to see that flow of rare earths keep coming too. So let's work on this deal. The U.S. knows there is somebody else put that word up, leverage. And the Russians are really, really brilliant. And I think they knew, we trust you people. We're going to bring our Chinese friends in the room. Talk to them. You know, rare earths having sons of bitches, you. We got you now, don't we? I think that's what the Russians are doing. They're like, we're going to talk to you, Russians. Hold on a second. We're going to can we call a lifeline? Can we buy a vowel? And the vowel is I and A. Try to put in the letters before it. I and A. CHI. You don't know China. You got it, brother. China's coming too. It makes sense. So they get it. And now let me add this. If Russia and China and the US get any kind of deal on anything, it's on olives. They're all going to sell and buy olives, whatever it is. How does Europe say no? How does the European leaders then say to the US, Russia, and China, we are not amused? They can't do it. And of course, Trump can say, oh, yeah, well, I hit you with 90% tariff, you idiots. So shut up. Oh, by the way, we're not buying any of your stuff. Your car is 25% tariffs, everything. I mean, Trump he doesn't have to do that. But all he has to say is 25% tariffs on your cars, and you're done. Do you really want to play this game? What are the Europeans going to do? And I think the other part of it is that the European leadership is desperate, looking bad, and they can't fight everybody. You know what I mean? They can't fight their own people, fight the Russians, how does the leadership fight the US, Russia, and China at the same time? I think they're not in a position to do that if the deal comes. And then of course for the Trump administration, it makes sense. the Trump administration, January 1st is going to start the what do you call it? It's going to start the election season for the midterms. There are a lot of people that are going to be challenged by MAGA people from the right, or from the populist right, shall we say. From anti-Zionist people are going to be challenging a lot of people. There's some PAC now, well, there's two, but one of them is a conservative PAC called it is an anti-Zionist PAC. There's another one that the Democratic Socialists and the Liberals are doing, which I don't trust, to be quite frank with you, if it's anything like Mamdani. So I think Trump knows he needs something big going into the midterms, or he's in a world of trouble. So I think that the Trump team now are looking at Ukraine saying, if we get this, if we can get this, then we can say to the MAGA people, okay, we told you it was going to be day one, but we couldn't do day one. But we were able to do it. It was hard. It was difficult, but we got a deal. We're in the Ukraine conflict. Now, there's some problems there, as I've discussed in, deal in show after show, in that the problem is when any kind of deal is made, it will be found out that Zelensky or whoever's in charge, that Ukraine is just a wild territory, that the more radical elements of Ukraine will not, the more radical elements of Ukraine will not go along with whatever the leadership in Kiev says. And that I don't think there's any way around Ukraine collapsing into instability and civil war, to be frank, when this is over, especially if some kind of deal is supposedly made. And they're like, okay, the deal is made with Ukraine. At that point, I think the Azov people, at the behest of the UK, at the behest of, the Rothschild organizations in the city of London and all of these scumbags, I think at that point, they then give their instructions to the neo-Nazis and say, okay, raise hell, destabilize this country, attack, do terrorism, anything you can. And then you do see we see Ukraine fall into that unstable territory that many have feared. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I think the potential is there. I think the Ukrainian people don't want it, but I think the UK and their filthy ilk do want it, and that's how they would try to do disruptions using, the neo-Nazis. And not only that, the neo-Nazis have everything to lose, right? Because let's face it, if this happens, there'd have to be some deals that no Nazism is allowed. And if you're a Nazi, how can you live in a country where there's no Nazi stuff allowed? You can't even goose step anymore. I mean, I can see them now complaining, man, back in my day, we used to goose step every day. We goose stepped in the morning, we goose stepped in the evening, we went out for lunch, and we took our family out and we goose stepped. And look, for God's sake, now it's written, no goose stepping allowed. The hell with that. We're fighting back. See, that's what the neo-Nazis would say. They will not allow a ban on goose stepping. There's a lot of crap they'll put up with, but a ban on goose stepping will not be tolerated in Ukraine. The Banderites have their red lines, and they're like, we'll put up with a lot, but no, you ain't banning goose stepping, dude. That's kind of a culture. It's our way of life, right? The feet going up and up. Goose stepping is it, right? No goose stepping, brother. Sorry, them days might just be over. And I think that it's possible. I don't know. Because one of the things that I've said is this: what does the Trump team do if the Europeans say no? Right? What does the Trump team do if they say whatever deal they want, whatever they want to do? Well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Let's say it's not a complete deal. Let's say it's something that they came up. I think, here's what I think. Let me put this differently. Look, I don't think the Trump team, right, can invest as much as they have. Clearly, in my opinion, there are those who disagree. Of course, for one who's not quite so sure, we're all, but clearly, in my opinion, there's those who disagree. I think the Trump, and I'm hearing this from other sources, that the Trump team is behind this NABU investigation. And they are working to weaken and destabilize the Kiev regime. That's part of their strategy, is to weaken, destabilize, and dare I say, dismantle the Kiev regime, right? And so to dismantle that, you got to have, I would say this, they got something in waiting. I don't know who it is, but they got some names that are in waiting that to be brought to power. I believe that there is a second government waiting that is being discussed in the same way that Victoria Nuland's infamous FDEU that she said, I think it should be Yatsenyuk. What about so-and-so? Nah, we want Yatsenyuk. I think the Yatsenyuk conversation is being had right now. I think the Russians are saying, we got Medvedev, and he's the former guy. And the Chinese are saying, oh, what about this guy? And Americans are like, no, we want Klitschko, whoever the hell, right? I think that conversation is being had, but I think there's going to be a conversation about who the next government is, just as there has been before. And the Russians will have significant input, right? So I think maybe a government, secondary government is being discussed. We don't know if it'll ever become to fruition, but I'm going to say this. I don't see how the Chinese and the Russians and the Americans go to Moscow next week and nothing comes out of it. I don't see how that happens. I don't see how they go to Moscow next week and nothing comes out of it. And they just go and they meet for a week and they all shake hands. Oh, darn, we couldn't get a deal. I'll tell you this. I think J.D. Vance, for one, could give a crap about Ukraine. I think J.D. Vance could be just as happy if the Russians say, here's a list of 20 things we need to sign. And the J.D. Vance would say, where's my quill pen? And they'd say, don't you want to read them yet? No. Does it mean that we don't have to deal with these maggots anymore? Yeah. Bring me a quill pen, and I'm going to put my John Hancock on that. You can have Ukraine, whatever the hell you want, take it, and we'll go kick the UK and the rest of these idiots right in the groin and tell them to do what the hell we told them to do, and that'll be that. I think if it was J.D. Vance, give me something to sign that says this is over and we're out. Now, I'm going to add this. I think something's important. I think that another thing that the Americans could do and should do and really have to do to really undermine this is, to me, let me say this. If I'm the guy that they're an advisor and they come to me and they say, Garland, we're working on a deal and we've definitely outlawed goose stepping, that's done. But we're wondering, other than outlawing goose stepping in Ukraine, what has to be in this deal? I'd say that's an easy one, brothers. If you want to deal with something, go to the root. We talk about root causes. We talk about the roots. We go as a substance. We go to talk about going to the foundation, right? Let's go to the foundation. The plan to take Russia out was two things. Number one, we start the conflict in Ukraine, right? We get that fired up. But what was number two? What was the dagger? What was the coup de grace? What was going to destroy him? The sanctions. All along. I have a sister who's a CPA, she's into the finances stuff, right? Always has been. And she's a financial wizard. And no matter what you tell my sister, what do you think about this? She'll say, Garland, it's always about the money, right? Because to her, in her world, dealing with high finance and corporations and all that crap that she's been dealing with, it always has been about the money because she's the person who handles the money, right? It's always about the money. That's what she says. And, there's something to be said about that. Here's my point. You ready? Trumpy, are you listening, J.D. Vance? Are you listening, Witkoff? Are you listening to all of you people? Here's the key. What was supposed to destroy Russia was the financial attack. That was supposed to be the one that took them down. We're going to do sanctions. We're going to take them off the SWIFT. We're going to do everything we can to throw a monkey wrench in their economic plans, and that will crush them, right? And what is it that the Europeans do? Think about this. Every month or two, they say, well, we've got the first 19 tranches of sanctions. What are we going to do now? Let's go for the 20th. That'll get them. No, the 21st. Well, what are up to the 87th? They'll be wheeling Kajikas with like an aluminum walker. We're going with the 88th tranche of sanctions. This will take the rest. Then they'll have to smell and salt to wake her back. 88th sanctions, right? The sanctions. Here's what you do. Trumpy and company. Drop them all. Now, the Russians, I don't think, care all that much about the sanctions because they're doing pretty well, but I think it would help them a lot if they didn't have to. There's things they could do that they're not doing now, right? And it would be good for me because I can buy stuff from Russia. that I can, and I could import stuff, and I could take a straight flight to Russia, 8 hours. How about that? It would be great. So my point being, if you really want to knee Starmer and Macron and Merritt's in the groin simultaneously, think about that. Simultaneously whap a knee to the groin. Can't you see them just like, oh, that look? And just falling to the ground, being kneed in the groin. That's what you want to do, right? Drop the sanctions. Listen to me, Trump. Here's what I'm saying. The sanctions were supposed to be the thing that destroyed them. If you drop the sanctions, the Europeans are screwed. Why is that? Because American companies can start doing business, and they shall. The American companies will be calling the Russians, can we get back in? Can we sell stuff? And the Russians are going to say, no, you can't. No, don't get me wrong. The Russians are going to say, nah, we're looking at it. Because a lot of things, I went there, a lot of things that were formerly U.S. owned were replaced by indigenous businesses, and it is working out well for the Russians. So a lot of people are going to say, can we come back into Russia? And Russia's going to say, in fact, no, you can't. No hard feelings. It's not that you're barred from it. It's just that we already got a domestic corporation handling that. We got domestic sellers handling that. We're not going to undermine our own. Sorry. That whole protectionism thing you're talking about with tariffs. Hello. Right. But my point is, there's mining, there's timber, there's coal, there's uranium, there's diesel fuel, there's all these things, right? All of a sudden, the Americans say, think about this. Number one, okay, we're going to buy stuff from the Russians again and sell stuff to the Russians. Can the UK and these other maggots, can they attack the ships coming in and out? Because some of them are going to be Americans, and they're going to be, everybody's going to say that. And what else is going to happen immediately? The Americans are going to say, that's it. We're going back to buying and selling with Russia. And the companies in Europe will say, hey, whoa, time out, brother. The companies in Europe will then say to Merritt and Macron, etc., look, we're selling a lot of Renaults over there, buddy. We're selling a lot of cars, selling a lot of stuff over there. And the Americans are getting in. And we'll be locked out of this market. For God's sake, we're only a couple of 100 kilometers away, and we're going to be locked out of the market. Why should we be locked out of the market? And the Americans are coming in. It's over. The Chinese are in. They're all working together, and we're locking out. Not going to happen. So what will happen is, at that point, the Europeans, I think, will then say to their leaders, you got to let us back in. So for all of them, look, let me add this. Even if you don't get a deal, which the odds are you won't, but let's cross our fingers. Even if the Americans and the Chinese and the Russians sit down next week and they don't get a deal for Ukraine, if the Americans drop their sanctions, all of them, every one of them, get rid of everyone you can, that you can get rid of yourself, Trump, without Congress, and say to Congress, I demand that you get rid of them, right? And push it, right? Get rid of every sanction you can. And then say, and not only that, and Congress says, well, I won't get rid of them. Then you say, well, guess what? The Treasury has to enforce them. So you may not get rid of the sanctions, but we're not enforcing them. So what are you going to do now? You can have the sanctions, but what good are they if the executive branch says to everybody, don't Treasury, all of you guys, don't enforce those sanctions. So now they're ineffective. So my point being, the one thing that Trump can do, get out of here, is kill as many sanctions as he can. That's what I would do. Kill as many sanctions as you can. I would lift the sanctions on Russian media, all of them. TASS, RT, Sputnik, you name it, because you do that, that's going to infuriate the EU so bad. You have to undermine them. You have to undermine their ability to screw you. So I don't know. At any rate, we'll see. This could be all come to nothing at the end of this week. It could be nothing, but I just think that the powers that are going to be there. Before I go, is there anything else? Let me just check the media as I can see it. The Guardian. See, here we go. Guardian, the European Union, along with the UK, has deliberately torpedoed the US peace roadmap aimed at ending the Ukraine conflict in the apparent hope that it will fizzle out, the Guardian has claimed. Shortly after the contents of the peace proposal were published, several EU member states, along with the UK, scrambled to present their own version. Uh, Bottom line is, their strategy presumably boils down to welcoming the fact of Trump's intervention before slowly and politely smothering it. So, well, there's that we know. Euramax gone. Anything else? Trump and Maduro spoke in secret phone call. I find that interesting. The Americans may attack Venezuela. For all I know, they maybe attack him, as I say, but I just have the feeling that they won't. I just have a feeling that Trump's going to back off from that. Let me think. Anything else? Oh, here's something interesting. Britain is going to be selling off embassies. Cash-strapped Britain to sell off embassies. Politico, they're going to be selling off some of their embassies, some of their more expensive stuff around the world. So they're in deep and serious trouble. And I mean, they're selling everything they can. Sooner or later, they'll be selling shoes and clothes and things like that. Let's see. Oh, here's interesting. Two things. Denmark has reportedly established a special night watch to monitor U.S. President Trump's statement after he insisted earlier this year that Greenland should be brought under U.S. control. So they're watching. I think that what that's about. Here we go. The U.S. is keeping the EU in the dark regarding ongoing diplomacy and possible draft documents aimed at ending the Ukraine conflict. Political Europe has reported, citing an unnamed EU official. On Friday, Politico Europe quoted the unnamed EU diplomat as saying that the latest version of the U.S. drafted peace roadmap is a closely kept secret to avoid possible leaks. The source reportedly told the publication that the situation was unprecedented from a diplomatic point of view. None of us had that information, the official added. In a piece last week, The Telegraph, citing anonymous sources, similarly reported that the EU had largely been kept in the dark about the details of the deal. Well, as soon as you found out, you leaked every damn thing. So what do you think they're going to do? Come on, let's not be stupid here. Let's see. Apparently, now see Orban again. So that Orban was in Moscow, right? Apparently, he said this: the only possible long-term solution. So Orban was in there working on that stuff. The only possible long-term solution is for the post-war order to be founded on the underlying principle that Ukraine becomes the buffer state that it once was. Exactly. Russia retains the territory agreed upon at an international peace conference, and everything to the west of this line, all the way to NATO's eastern border, comprises the territory of Ukraine, which will once again become a buffer state, right? Russia and NATO must agree on the manpower and the equipment of the Ukrainian armed services that are allowed to operate in the buffer zone, and both would have to guarantee that no one will subjugate this buffer state to their power. This is a matter for discussion, and international law provides the tools to create such a system of guarantees, Orban said. Orban said talks with Russia had been successful. So basically, in a nutshell, Orban was in look, he's going to be an important figure, and Orban was there working on this process, I think, representing. Here's what I think the Russians, the Chinese, and the Americans see Orban as the future of Europe, the future type of Europe, basically. And that's not even saying he's a left wing or a right wing. We know he's a right wing, but Slovakia is a left wing. I think they see the future of Europe being people who are looking out for their own countries, right? Let's see. I see. Okay, here's something we got in Russian media. Rustam Umerov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, has been appointed the head of the country's delegation to negotiations on the Ukrainian conflict, according to a decree by Zelensky. He's the head of the delegation. Let's see what they're saying. Uh, okay, let's see what they're saying in Kiev. Zelensky names new delegation for peace talks. Here's an interesting one. Kiev Post. European countries are considering new ways to respond to Russia's hybrid warfare, including joint offensive cyber operations and surprise NATO-led military drills. Again, so what they're saying is um, we're still playing the same game. Anything else I'm seeing here? Uh, I see. Here's one. EU plunges ahead with the Ukraine loan as Belgium pleads for alternatives. The European Commission vowed to continue to try to harness Russian assets to provide a loan to Ukraine on Friday, despite Belgium's exhortations that the EU seek alternatives to the 185 billion pound cash scheme. Here's the thing about it. Again, I think that the reality of the what do you call it? The inclusion of this money that has been confiscated in the talks and in the potential deals. I think that number one, that makes it very, very difficult for this loan thing to go through. Belgium knows if it does, their goose is cooked and it's over for them. I think that only the most rabid lunatics want that to happen, but the rabid lunatics are in charge. So I think that, and the Trump team saying, hey, look, man, there's a big chunk of money sitting there. We like to get a piece of that pie. And the Russians are saying, look, we never expect to get that money back. If we can utilize that money, see, as leverage to the Russians, it's their money, but it's also leverage. So they may say, we got some leverage. The U.S. wants a piece of it. Everybody wants a piece of it. We got to spend it anyway. We're going to do this and that. You know what? That money is leverage. And the Russians going to use it as leverage. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever sent a stinging letter to Commission to von der Leyen, in which he denounced the loan as fundamentally wrong and urged the EU to plug Kiev's yawning budget gap by making use of the headroom in the bloc's long-term budget. So the Belgians just saying, no, we just can't do this. We're not able to do this. Let me just check real quick, see if I got any messages, see what I got. Anything else on Russia? Pepe Escobar. Russia will not accept it. They have to rewrite 80% of the deal to make it work. He says to Rick Sanchez. Yeah, I agree. I think we are. Yeah, I don't see a lot. Let me look here. I'm just looking for something. It might have popped up. According to yeah, I don't see much else. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. I certainly appreciate it. I just dug around to see if I could find anything, but I think we're at the end of our rope. Let me look and see. I don't see any super chats. If there were any super chats, we would be. No, don't see any. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Do me a favor. Share this on all your social media platforms. Thank all my Patreon members. If you can use through Patreon or PayPal or buy me a coffee, Cash App, whatever, if you're able to contribute to the channel, it's appreciated. There's a PO box. You can certainly mail contributions, books. I got another great book the other day. All kinds of things people send me there. I certainly appreciate that. But whatever the case may be, I think the most important thing you can do to help the channel is to help all of us by sharing this on all your social media platforms. I'm out.